And here we are with the Audi A5 Cabriolet. Sometimes you don't need supercar performance and you just want a good all-around car that you can drop the top and cruise. So thanks to my friends at Audi Milwaukee for letting me have a go in this A5 cab. Okay, so it's like 100 degrees in Milwaukee this week, which is borderline too hot for a convertible. However, it's like sub-zero here 90% of the time, so you won't catch me complaining about a little heat. But with that, we have to talk about what we have here today. We'll start where we always do, under the hood. What you have here is the familiar 2-liter turbo from the VW group, but in this application it makes a healthy 261 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque. And that power goes through a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission before making its way to all 4 wheels. After all, this is an Audi. And you know what? 261 horsepower and 273 pound-feet of torque is plenty for something like this. This isn't the S5, this isn't the RS5, it's not trying to be overly sporty, and I'm not worried about the limit handling complexities of something like this, a convertible. What I am concerned with in something like this is the enjoyability of being able to drop the top and look cool. And 261 horsepower, by the way, that's plenty enough to look cool. And the reality is, if you have more power, you'd be encouraged to drive quicker, which means less people would see you looking cool. In truth, the turbocharged engine has plenty of punch, and the transmission is smooth and gets quick and sharp in dynamic mode. Another thing we haven't talked about is the mild hybrid system that helps smooth out power and get 26 mpg combined. And smooth is the operative word here. What I'm looking for is exactly what Audi excels at, and that's the sweet spot between excitement, style, and luxury. 0 to 60 is 5.3 seconds, and that's as fast as an M3 from like the early to mid 2000s, so it's perfectly fine in terms of excitement. And then in terms of style, just look at this thing. It's the sexier sibling to the A4. And then luxury, well, of course, the ride is fantastic. The dynamics are intuitive, and even without the roof, this thing is still quiet and refined. I could have a whisper conversation with my passenger right now. So the A5 convertible does it all. It's got decent steering, a good solid chassis, and well-damped suspension. The brakes are good, the power is perfectly adequate, and whether the top is up or down, you get a nice, composed, and refined ride. Something befitting of the 4 rings. And every once in a while, it's nice to just get into a car that's just simply good. It's not super aggressive shouting at you or beating you up with the ride. It's not $1 million worth of suspension made of gold and baby's tears. And it's just a good car that gets you to be more relaxed than you left A. So with that, it's probably a good time to step outside, talk some details. Okay, so this A5, I mean, it's just a good car. You know, at its core, it is, as a car, very good. It's supremely comfortable. It's a good balance. It's got decent power, and you have the not the practicality, but the fun of having a sunroof. Now, this is one thing that I'll say right from the jump, is that I prefer generally convertibles to look kind of like this, not necessarily be the dedicated roadster, because 1, you have actual back seats, and sometimes you can even fit adults back there, and 2, you have a much more usable trunk. And plus, this A5, since it's an Audi, has quattro all-wheel drive. And I guess the point that I'm making here is that you can use this thing day in, day out. The top is acoustically lined, it's quiet, it's refined, it keeps heat in the winter. It's nice to drop it in the summer. It's 100 degrees out here today, and I can have the top down with some AC on, perfectly refreshing. But let's get to how this thing looks. It looks very Audi, it looks smart. It looks very modern, very typical. You've got a lot of kind of hard bodyline creases going down the hood, drawing your attention to the very typical Audi grille. It's kind of that, what would that be, a hexagon shape, but you've got your nice chrome rings, chrome outline. Some of the most interesting styling elements on modern Audis is, of course, the headlights, the running lights. So these have kind of like a nice perforated type pattern. You've got some chrome down in your lower front valence. Then you have a little bit of a mini air curtain bringing air around your wheel. These are 19-inch wheels, or like, I don't know, a V-spoke pattern, but wrapped in Continental tires. Again, this is a nice car. It doesn't need a super aggressive sport tire. It's just good. The only weird thing I think is from the side, you have this. And I guess it kind of breaks up the body line because there typically wouldn't be a lot going on if this weren't here, but it's just kind of a nice little styling element. Now, one thing that I'll point out right away is that all Audi convertibles have the A-pillar / windshield surround bit in chrome or satin chrome or silver or whatever you want to call it. But if you ever see an Audi convertible and it's not this color on the A-pillar, it's been changed aftermarket. So just be aware of that. And then it also does, you know, kind of continue all the way down the body and around the back deck. So of course this is the rear compartment where the roof goes. It's real nice, gets up and down and pretty quick. You just have some chrome accenting on your door handle. It kind of pulls out nice and easy, but it's generally a pretty simple design around the side. You have this pretty sharp body line that runs the belt, goes all the way from the headlight all the way into the taillight, but that's really all that's going on. Slightly flared fenders around the rear to give it a little bit marginally sporty stance, and of course around the back we talk about that rear deck. They integrated the third taillight up here into that chrome stripping where your roof would go. So here, again, the most interesting or craziest styling bit is the taillights. It's kind of a similar pattern to what you get in the headlights, kind of checkerboard or perforated, but then you have your 4 rings, you've got your A5 badge, and you've got your Quattro badge, and then of course you have dual exhaust and a small kind of like matte black diffuser type thing. Of course in the trunk you have, well, we'll get to the trunk when we talk interior. Let's hop in. Okay, and then so on the interior here, this is where I'm going to hold this thing to a pretty high standard. I don't need it to be a McLaren behind the wheel. I don't need the styling to be, you know, a Lamborghini. I want it to be an interior that's simple, that's comfortable, and it's easy to get on with, and it ticks all of those boxes perfectly. The interior is very clean. It's simple without forcing everything you do to be in the screen. All the stuff that you use all the time, your HVAC, your auto start stop, your drive modes, all of that stuff is a physical button outside of the infotainment screen, and I love that. It's super easy to get to. The infotainment screen itself is a decent size, but it is very much a tacked on square bit of screen, and I think that's okay because it matches the rest of the styling here. The design is very modern, it's very minimal, and I think the screen integrates well despite it being, you know, more of a tacked on dedicated, you know, rectangle on your dashboard. It does have some nice features. It's got really good black levels, it's got nice interaction, haptic feedback sort of thing. Some of the best MMIs are just, at least from a graphics and processing standpoint, are Audis. Their Google Earth integration is fantastic, along with the you know, digital cockpit, which is fabulous. We'll talk about that in a minute, but you do have Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, great 360 camera. The reverse camera, interestingly, and I shouldn't say interestingly because we see this a lot actually, the 360 camera is a better resolution than simply the reverse camera. So that's always been interesting to me, but that's, you know, that's where you get it. Your steering wheel, it's a good size. I like it. It's a clean design. It's very simple. The leather feels expensive. The stitching is good. You do have, you know, some of your, you know, media controls over here on the right-hand side, and you've got your menu and info controls to control your digital cluster on the left-hand side. So that is really nice to see. Of course, you do have the virtual cockpit, which is the fully integrated screen. Again, Audi was some of the first people, they were the first people to do the virtual cockpit, and it is, I think still to this day, they have probably the highest standard for digital cockpits. Of course, we mentioned that the design it's very minimal, it's very Germanic in that way, but the build materials, you know, again, this is where you look to Audi as kind of the leader. Even Mercedes is more design than actual build. BMW is very simple, the build is solid, but Audi here you have a really nice interior. You've got this nice lacquered wood here. All of your leather has got a nice, you know, kind of give to it. It's all soft touch, aluminums and that sort of thing. Now, of course, down here in your center area, you do have a USB, 12 volt, you've got dual cup holders, and you've got this kind of storage bin in front of your gear selector. On the side then, running this wood strip, is your volume control and your song selector, and then you have the toperation control, so to raise and drop the top, and like I said, it does it pretty quick. You also do have a storage bin underneath your little center armrest here with another USB-C. And as we start to talk about the back seats, one thing I do want to mention, if you are going to put the top down, make sure you don't have anybody sitting in the back while you do it, because they will get slapped in the face with the top. So if you want a face full of, you know, cloth or canvas or whatever it is, have at it. Maybe you don't like that person that much, go for it. But the rear seats themselves, they're usable, although I wouldn't want to drive cross country at 6'1" in them. It's more of like, hey, we're gonna go drive down to the beach, let's all pop in. So it's kind of like short distances. You know, the front passenger is gonna have to move up a little bit so the rear passenger can get their legs in comfortably. There also is a pretty high center tunnel, and there's no middle seat. So it is a 2+2, it is a 4-seat vehicle. And the last thing I want to talk about is the trunk. And of course, it's a convertible, so the top has to go somewhere. It takes up some trunk space. It's a pretty deep trunk, but it's compromised in terms of the way that you can't have super oblong or super bulky things in there. However, if you want to put longer things in here, just see how Tony Stark does it. But I think that's probably a good time to get into final thoughts. Well, there it is, your summertime and honestly year-round best friend. It's brilliantly smooth and comfortable while having enough zip to be fun and exciting and enough room to share that excitement with a few friends. This is an Audi, so it gets quattro all-wheel drive, and the headliner is thick enough to reduce noise and keep heat in, so it's totally usable year-round, even in the Midwest. Thanks again to my friends at Audi Milwaukee for letting me have a go, and we'll see you in the next one.